healthcare today, the challenge is not lack of knowledge or information. It's how we connect it and apply it in real practice. Across the world, we have powerful data, insights, and best practices. But how do we really implement them and translate them into our operational practices in hospitals? Welcome to One World, One Health series podcast with MedEdge. I'm Dr. Jennifer Kozaily, your host for today, and I'm going to be discussing today with Dr. Shweta Anand. Thank you for being here and thank you for your time. Welcome to this session, and let's dive into those questions with you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Shweta Anand. By education, I'm a dental surgeon, but by profession, I'm a healthcare consultant. So my experience in the patient safety domain, it goes long way back when I started working in India in the domain of pharmacovigilance. That's when I got first-hand experience of how medication safety is dealt at a large scale. I was working with pharmaceutical companies trying to understand the adverse events and their reporting. Next, I relocated to Hong Kong and got into research side of things, where I started working with hospitals, big data sets, and real world evidence to understand how patient safety matters. How from the actual things happening in the world, you can translate those insights into learnings and get that things done in the hospitals. Next, I moved towards the policy side of things. I tried to understand the healthcare system as a whole. During my master's in public health, that was from the University of Hong Kong, I looked at how different healthcare systems they developed and how the policies and regulations led to various outcomes. After that, I started my healthcare consulting journey, where now I currently working with different healthcare organizations to understand the global best practices they can work upon, to benchmark them where they stand, and finally developing the strategies for them on ground level. So that has been my experience so far, and today I'm really excited to be in this podcast and really share what I have learned after working in different healthcare systems.
So I'm going to start with my first question for you, Dr. Shweta. From your own perspective, what does One World, One Health mean in the context of patient safety and hospital performance?
This theme, One World, One Health, is really interesting theme that WHO has chosen, I feel, because it resonates a lot how different healthcare systems are interconnected, how they develop learning from each other, as well as following the best practices. For me, in terms of patient safety and hospital performance, I feel, and I want to categorize this into three broad categories. First is shared risks. Second is shared learning. Lastly, shared accountability. Let me explain how. So shared risk, if you see across the world, whether it is hospitals in Asia, Europe, or even Middle East, they all have the risks that they share in terms of hospital-acquired infections or medication errors, which are very similar within any area. Secondly, the shared learning, and this goes with learning from the best practices, learning from different healthcare systems, as well as learning to adapt. And I'll give you an example here. So while I was working in Hong Kong, I was doing a project on sentinel events, which is the medication errors. I was trying to understand their policies, how they were developed, or how the system works in case such events happen. And then I learned a lot of those policies have been adapted from Australian healthcare systems. So they did not just copy paste all the regulations or policies, but they adapted them based on the Hong Kong healthcare system and developed them. That shows how system learns from one another. And lastly, shared accountability. Shared accountability, it goes for providing the culture for patient safety. It is the accountability, not to just have individual in place to have that blame culture, but as a system as a whole. And I think for me, this shows how well and how deep healthcare system work across the world.
So from your experience, how do you think that hospitals are implementing those data? Do we have an issue in implementation of data, or hospitals are working more in silos and not implementing the data that they are collecting?
I think, and here I would like to go one step back. There are the global best practices, then the hospitals, they have their own data sets, and then comes the implementation. So if you talk about like having those best practices within the hospital system, implementation is a major challenge. All hospitals, they have very different settings. The data they collect is very specific to their population, the cohort of patient that is there, and in terms of operational challenges, each hospital is facing their own operation challenge. So it gets very difficult for them to convert that actual data into insights. There are a lot of things that need to like happening on the ground level, which starts from like training of staff to understand what is happening, then having people analyze that data to convert into insights. So a lot of challenges goes there. I think with a lot of like AI coming in, hospitals are trying to move, but there we see a transitional phase still.
But definitely with AI, we have a lot of other challenges that come up with it, because now we have lots of knowledge, lots of information, lots of data, and AI is giving even more and more leverage and information to users, healthcare providers, hospitals to use. But the problem is, I think it's more in the implementation. We have lots of information, but how are we translating them into practices? And what are the main challenges the hospitals are facing while they are trying to implement this amount of knowledge, amount of information, amount of data into their daily practices and operations?
That is really interesting part, and I feel that I will categorize the challenges into three parts. First being the conceptual one, like we have this amount, we have all the global best practices, we have a lot of information, but to understand that it is not a copy-paste implementation, it is a bigger task here. What works in one system, it might not work in other. You have to adapt there, you have to understand the concept, and then based on your setting you have to see what works for you. So this is the main challenge which I see. Then there is the implementation part, where what you have understood, okay, this is what works for me, but how to implement that? How do I train my staff? How do I get people knowing that this has to be done? Or how do I manage my workflows within already a system that is going on? This is like where hospitals are struggling. So many a times it just becomes a checklist but does not reach to implementation part. And third, I would say a lot of time for this data to come into practice, the feedback has to happen. The leadership, they need to be aligned towards it and embed all these insights into their system. So a lot of time people don't understand, like, how do we take this feedback, how do we build that culture where we feel comfortable to come and say this has happened and this is how we need training, or this is how we can improve it.
So the main advice you give to hospitals and executive team is to work on their culture first before trying to implement anything, right?
I do think that what needs to change foremost is mindset. To have an open mind that this is not a blame game, but this is the system improvement things that we are working on, and this is not one individualistic thing, but we have to move as a whole unit. So I definitely feel this is really important to happen.
Yeah, because as you said early on that, we have the data, but we have to implement it based on our own hospital practices. And the data is not going to be the same for all. It's not one size fits all. And I think the executive team and the hospital leaders, they need to understand that, because sometimes you try to implement a practice or a best practice, but it doesn't really conform with your own practice or the culture that you have or the environment. So it differs from one country to another. And I think that's something that we need to focus on.
Exactly.
Yes, we are globally connected, but we also need to understand that even if we're globally connected, not everything is going to be applicable to our own practices.
Exactly. There are a lot of things that you can apply. There are lots of learnings that you can take, but then you need to adapt.
And what is the advice? I mean, if you were to provide an advice to leaders, what is like the best advice you can provide to them? Like, what is on the top of your list that you would want them to focus on so they can have better implementation of this data and the research in patient safety?
For me, I think it is really important to understand your organization. It is really important to see where they are struggling. It is really important to see that, okay, if hospital needs improvement in an area, there is some problem down there. Of course, you can use those best practices, but you really need to understand what the problem is, where you're gonna fit that best practice. Unless and until you do not understand your people better, you do not understand your organization better, I think the rest just follows through. So foremost, I think the advice to leaders, to really know what the problem is, to be able to solve it and improve it.
Okay. Talking about data, what are the main indicators that are essential in patient safety and hospital performance?
I think it is very important to not just look at the volume of things, indicators that measure volume, but also indicators that measure compliance or culture and learning. So for me, I would like to categorize these indicators into 3 categories. First being the common one where you measure the output, the number of incidences that have been reduced or number of infections that are occurring. That tells you exactly where you stand. Second, I would say the compliance indicators. If the events has happened and you are training, whether people are actually performing those trainings, how those trainings have been done, or are people adhering to surgical safety checklists? So having those indicators as compliance indicators in place. And lastly, the culture and learning indicators, which I feel are very important but often overlooked.
And it's the biggest challenge that we have.
And it's the biggest, exactly, the biggest challenge we have. These are the indicators such as, are people actually willing to report the incidents? How many near misses are there? Just to get the idea what, as you said, the biggest challenges and how you can overcome. So for me, these 3 categories would be really important to get a wholesome picture of patient safety and hospital performance.
Yeah, it goes back to looking into the culture again. We go back into the culture. That's the most important thing that
Exactly.
we need to focus on. The no blame and reporting culture and encouraging people to report incidents.
Exactly.
So we can learn from them.
Yeah. Exactly.
But if you want to summarize in one sentence, how do we make patient safety global?
Oh, I think this is what we are aiming for, to work towards. To make patient safety global, I think firstly we need to close the data gaps. We started this discussion with how important is data, but when you actually go into reality, a lot of healthcare systems, they struggle to collect this amount of data as well. If we have to work towards one world, one health, it is really important to close the data gap, especially for the LMIC's countries, which are still struggling. Secondly, it is very important for leaders to take ownership, to come forward and say and align their policies or practices with the global best standards. I think that would be really important. And secondly, which has been the topic of discussion throughout, is to have a culture in place where it is not a blame game, but we all are in this together. We all work together to improve what has gone wrong. And it's not just one's responsibility, but it goes with everyone.
Back to WHO, accountability, shared accountability,
Exactly.
shared learning, and shared risks.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so
and
much, Jennifer.
Hopefully we'll have another discussion sometime soon.